an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood, episode 27, Interlude Party. In this episode, we spend a lot of time with Hempstool, who seems to have like an alter ego or something, and it's a lot of flashbacks. I don't really know how much I'm going to have to talk about in this one. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this entire series. So I just wanted to mention to you all that because this is such a plot light episode, it feels like the kind of filler episode that sitcoms do when the writers are off for the week and they just decided that they were going to have a best of. That I will be accepting questions in the Ask a Question section here on Crowdcast, because I feel like I'm going to have the time to answer them. So this is such a weird, it's a clip show, but the context of it is around Hempstool, and I genuinely don't know what to make of what's going on. It's almost like I don't know how much of this to take as symbolism and how much to take at face value, because the flashback where he's talking to Pinako, he is the same age. He looks exactly the same as he does today. And Pinako is obviously way younger. So I can't tell, is that meant to reference the fact that he doesn't age? Or is this just supposed to be him in this dream and he imagines himself still looking like he looks in reality, but the dream is the memory? I'm assuming that is what's happening there. Candace says, did you watch to the end of the credits? No. Was this one where I was supposed to do that? I lost track of when I was supposed to watch post-credits. Sorry about that. Let's see. B. Moore says it was largely meant as a recap episode, but they added in the characterization. This was all basically a dream. Yeah. So that's kind of what I mean is the overall, because it's a dream, I'm not sure what to take literally and what to take figuratively. Anyway, I'm going to start, but I just wanted to mention that if you guys feel like you have questions that you want to ask me for theories that you would like for me to expand on, this is the episode to do it in, because I'm going to have the time, I think. But let's begin, shall we? I really do resent the fact that I'm paying for a Funimation membership, but they still feel the need to give me the little advertisement at the beginning. I paid for this. You don't need to advertise to me. I'm paying you already. What are you hoping to accomplish with this? I don't get it. Anyway, so the episode begins with this overhead shot of a group of people who are all getting drunk and dancing around this fire. And we have Hempstool sitting there with his fucking reflecting glasses looking so sinister and so sad. And Pinako comes up to him and she looks like she's 25, and she's got a bottle of a booze called Stray Dog, which is pretty funny. I love the label too. It's a dog skull with an eye patch over one eye, implied with the line that's holding the eye patch on. And there's apparently skull ears as well, which sure. And the dog also is holding a bone in its teeth because dogs like bones. So it's sort of like a weird, almost Jolly Roger, but with a dog head, which I honestly really like. I feel like that's a brand that could actually take off. And when she gives him the bottle and says, like, you need to take a drink and loosen up, he seems to resist for a moment, and then he smiles and shifts so that we can actually see his eyes past his scary glasses. And that's the cold open. And then we go to credits. Erica says, do you mean the Funimation you should be watching? I think that's because Funimation is also the production company, though I could be wrong. Maybe that's what it means. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All right. So then we have, the conversation with her talking about whether or not he thinks people should be having a party right now. In times like these is the way that she puts it. Which is interesting because based on how much younger she is, I am assuming the whole thing with Ishval has not yet happened. So evidently what we find out a little bit later on is that, like, ever since King Bradley became the ruler, shit has gotten a lot more militaristic. And Ishval, the genocide that happened there, was sort of like the crescendo of a conflict that was going on for quite some time. But yeah, she's telling him that, like, especially in times like these, people need to be able to enjoy themselves. We're always at war. There's never a good time. No matter how many times it happens, they never learn. And this is her still talking. The human race is made up of violent, miserable fools. And we cut from there to that scene with the little girl, like, crying up against a wall while all the grown-ups are fighting. And looking at these, I'm pretty sure every bit of the animation in this section is all stuff that we have seen before. So then we have Hughes. And I guess that this is like, this is what's sort of weird for me, is that if this is a dream, these moments where it's like either he's inventing a scene in the dream, or he was there and this is a memory, or he knows about this happening and is, like, creating a scene around the memory. But it's just, you know, the fact that this is part of his dream, that's the parts where I started to be like, wait, what's going on? Because I assumed that this was a dream initially, when Pinako is so much younger and it feels like he's disconnected from the scene around him. I was like, okay, this feels like it's not real. But then when we go to this moment with Hughes, I was like, but he's not even in this scene. Why would he dream this? So it's sort of like, there are a couple moments like this where I'm just like, yeah, but you weren't there for that. So, you know, it's just meant to be, I guess, like, Candace says, it's anime filler logic. Yeah, exactly. Zjagi says, I'd recommend rewatching this episode after you've finished the whole series. This is an episode that really profits from you knowing what is going on in the overall story. Okay. And B. Moore says, it was also kind of a fourth wall break about it being time for an interlude episode as well. The clips aren't exactly his dream. The clips are for it to be a recap episode, and they punctuate his few minutes of characterization. Okay. So it's a clips episode interspersed with his dream. It's not like the whole episode is his dream. Okay, that makes more sense. And Hughes is basically just like, oh, wow, there's still war happening. And a reminder that there's a huge country above them named Drachma. And he says the government's going to have a hard time keeping control at this rate. And it cuts directly from him to Ling. Sounds like you guys have your hands full, all right. And he's talking to Ed here. Again, I was just like, wait, what's happening? Because this feels like a conversation that's happening in the present that why did we even have Hughes in here at all? We could have just had Ed talking about the historical, like, wars that have happened. Having it be Hughes and then jump to Ed and Ling talking was, like, jarring. And I still don't really get what, is it just supposed to be that Ed wouldn't have this information? Because yes, this isn't secret information. I don't know, whatever. So yeah, he says, like, the thing I mentioned about Bradley coming to power and that being when everything got the most militaristic. And then we go back to the dance around the fire and this little girl coming up to Hohenheim and asking him to dance. And he says he doesn't dance. I'll just sit here and watch you. And she's like, that sucks. No, come on. And Pinako says he'll break his hip if he does because he's too old. Why don't you just go dance with those kids? And she gets really cranky and runs off, but she's just like, you know what? Fuck this guy. And then Pinako says, weren't your kids around her age when they started planning to bring back their mom? So that was when I cemented, okay, this, like, the timing of this would make no sense. This has to be a dream. So then we see Ed and Al sitting at their mother's grave, obviously contemplating what they're going to do. And it cuts to him meeting Ed at the grave. And when Pinako says, why didn't you say anything and stop them? He says, it's pointless to do so. Nothing can change the reality of what they've done. They'd still be damned. Wait a minute. What does that mean? Like, okay. Weren't your boys her age when they started planning to bring back their mom? You're their father. Why didn't you say anything to them? It says, why didn't you say anything to them? Like, you knew they were planning this and you didn't step in, is the vibe. It could be you knew what they did and you never spoke to them about it afterward. But the real vibe I'm getting is you knew they were planning it and you didn't reach out to them to stop them. And he says, it doesn't matter. They'd still be damned. So why is that? Why would they be damned? It's like, I mean, and Pinako says, well, that's pretty harsh. And I was like, I mean, harsh is one word, but it also just kind of feels unhinged. Their sin is still a sin. Candace is saying because he doesn't see Trisha or his sons as his equals. He loves Trisha because she made him happy for a brief time and because she is tragic to him. He said so in this episode. Does he? I'm sorry, I must have missed that. B. Moore says it was kind of unclear, but it wasn't about stopping them. It was about talking to them in the aftermath. He didn't know they were planning to. He was gone. Okay. All right. So, because it sounded like she was saying you knew, but okay, if he doesn't, he's just basically like, well, they already did the thing. So what's the point in going and talking to them? Because they already, like, basically broke the taboo and did something incredibly fucked up. And after he says that, we get the whole scene of the failed transmutation again. Which just at that point, when we started to see all of that again, I was just like, all right, what are we doing? We don't need to, like, we know how this all went. And then we have a moment where they're all talking to the doctor about his research, Dr. Marco. And he tells them about how it was a philosopher's stone and don't seek after it because it's the devil's research. If you chase the stone, you will go through hell. It should have been destroyed. And, I mean, considering that we've got, like, the deadly sins out here, I'm feeling like you're going to go through hell is a lot more literal than anybody really expected it to be. But there it is. And then we go back to the fire. So the fire is a very controlled bonfire for a moment. And then it seems to just kind of like conflagrate into this giant that like it feels a lot more out of control, and people are dancing, but there's a sense to the dancing of like we're teetering on the edge of something that's more violent. And the shadows that we see, everybody is growing like more long-limbed and weirdly like twirly at the ends in a sort of way that makes me think of the hands in the portal or something. It's like, I don't know if they're meant to represent something specific or if it's just the overall warping of whatever it is that he is seeing. So then we hear, it's remarkable how weak they are. And he looks over, and there is a dude that looks exactly like him without the glasses, saying they have like an innate fear of the dark. And how do they handle this fear? They simply pretend it doesn't exist. They run away from it and light fires and whatever. Humans are weak. I don't know how anybody could say otherwise. So we should just take advantage of their weakness. They make a good natural resource. It's really all they're good for. And this obviously feels like, okay, so Hempstool isn't actually two different people. This is like the bad version of himself. And I am assuming that it is symbolic. But it seems pretty clear that he is the father at this point. And I just really want to know why he keeps saying human beings in a way that suggests that he's not one. What is he? Because he fathered 2 children. And as far as we know, homunculi cannot do that. So is it just supposed to be that he's like got some sort of ability that makes him like, because Candace is saying like he believes he's elevated above everyone else. Is there like a practical reason for him feeling this way, or is it just that kind of superiority that people assign themselves for whatever reason? B. Morris says, remember also at the end of this episode, it's revealed that Pinako isn't Pinako, it's himself. Yeah. And that, because it starts off basically with her being like, people are miserable, violent creatures. So that's clearly not Pinako right at the start. Erica says, I thought his dream double and dream Pinako were 2 different things, but I might be misremembering. I think that they are both serving the same purpose in this dream. It seems like, again, guys, I'm just like going with what, it's so hard to know. And I would, if you guys weren't like mentioning certain things, I would definitely be misinterpreting a lot of this. So I don't love this episode because it doesn't feel effective to the storytelling. It feels like the kind of thing that's like littered with Easter eggs for people who read the manga, or like B. More mentioned something to come back to, or no, it's Diego mentioned something to come back to afterward. If you know what's going to happen, it might mean more to you. But coming from where I am, watching this felt like, okay. Like at the end, I just felt like, didn't see the point of that, but I guess it just didn't feel like it added anything for me. And we have like a bunch of just not only like mentioning of things, but we have full repeats of scenes that I don't feel I don't need to see them again. I don't get the reason behind it. So we've got, and like I said, I may eventually see the reason behind it. But as from where I'm sitting right now, I'm just kind of like, okay. So we have the scene with Ed fighting number 48, who Lust comes in and puts down when he's like about to tell Ed who created him. And the reason that he is about to tell Ed, and I say him, but it's them because it's like two brothers sharing this like suit of armor. But he tells Ed, I'm going to tell you this secret because you actually see us as people and have a kind of like empathy that to me is worth something. And of course, as we know, Lust comes in and stabs him right through the back of the head for the helmet. And then Envy comes in and begins to really like scratch at the blood sigil that is on the inside of the armor. So yeah, again, we've seen this. B. Moore says, oh my God, Michael says, filler metal recap missed. That is tortured, Michael. B. Moore says, the point is a recap episode that adds very little. Anything extra is just little hints for things that may make sense later. You don't need to see them, but somebody who has been watching the show intermittently over a year or so during release might. That's true, because like the thing with that I forget about recaps, and this is actually something that I had wanted to mention. Nowadays, recap episode. Satyagi, what are you doing? I'm sorry. Satyagi, I'm deleting your comment. I just don't even want to risk seeing anything that has, like, don't put spoilers on it and then just don't do it. Just don't do it. Guys, don't put spoilers in a comment section that I can read while I'm recording so that it's really difficult for me to, like, stop and process that it says spoilers before I can start actually reading the spoiler. Don't do that. So the point of a recap episode, like B. Moore mentioned, it makes a lot more sense stopping and thinking about it as, okay, some of the episodes that I've watched really recently, another person only saw like a year earlier. 'Cause I've been watching these 2 a week. So I've been at double speed, assuming that this came out weekly, which I figure is how it went. I remember the days when you couldn't get a recording of a show. Like, I grew up during the era when even taping something on VHS was kind of a big deal off of the television. I knew people who did it, but it was the sort of thing that like most people didn't. It was kind of like, it felt like you were in the future to be able to just fast forward through commercials and stuff. And then like when TiVo came out, you guys remember fucking TiVo? But back in those days where it was always just, oh, I'm going to watch a rerun, or, you know, if you could find them way after a show actually ended, usually. Recap episodes were really fun because it was impossible to go back and rewatch episodes that you really liked unless they came out as a rerun show later. So it was sort of fun to be reminded of things that happened in previous episodes that you were literally never going to be able to go back to again. And nowadays we could go back to them. Like I was watching Golden Girls way back a couple years ago with Owen, and we came across a Clips episode, and it was such a weird experience because I remember loving Clips episodes when I was little. It was just like, it felt so comforting. It felt comforting the way that rewatching sitcoms that you are familiar with feels now. But at the time, because we didn't have that, it was like as close as you could get. And now I come across a clip show and I'm just like, oh, what the fuck? What is the point of this? So B. Moore, I appreciate that reminder because it's just like, it's a totally different experience these days with being able to stream stuff. And nobody does Clips episodes anymore because there's no point. Like they'll even do like occasional flashbacks, but they barely do that in a lot of things now, which personally I prefer to them to not, because sometimes doing a full flashback, it's like, yeah, we get it. You don't need to spell it out so completely. But yeah, I like completely forget about the people who are watching this week to week. So it does make more sense. So the overall scene where this guy gets taken out, is repeated. And then we have, the chat between Lust and what's his face, Mustang, about him being a sacrifice and her taking his glove off and destroying it. And then we go to Marco. I've been sitting here a while trying to decide what you mean by sacrifice, trying to figure out why I'm here and what it is exactly you want me to do. And then we go to Hughes again, and he's looking at all of the different spots on the map and the uprisings and the genocide. How could this even happen? Who could orchestrate something as terrible as this? Marco saying, I'm fairly certain that they're using this to form a giant transmutation circle. Let's see, I'm trying to make sure I get that. He's using this land and its people to form a giant transmutation circle. And your hope is that the end result will be the creation of a philosopher's stone. Am I wrong? So that moment of Marco saying that, Dr. Marco, was that in the scene where he is talking to Lust and Envy because they've like taken him prisoner? Because I said something about trying to make a giant transmutation circle, and I said it like I came up with the idea, and I don't remember that he said this already. I must have missed it, or just like absorbed it and moved on and not really like let it sink in what that meant. So I guess here goes a spot where a refresh is helpful. But we get to see the moment of like the destroyed civilization, Xerxes, I think it was, happening. And when we come back to Hohenheim and his weird little dream, he's talking to Pinako, who is saying, why have you kept quiet about it? Even if I had spoken up and warned them, it wouldn't have changed anything. And I guess he's talking about Xerxes at this point. I've watched humanity for a long time now, and all I've seen them do is endlessly repeat the same mistakes. And it's like they run away or they roll over. And we get this moment as he's saying this that is so weird. These people are dancing and they're getting more and more frantic as they're dancing in front of this fire. And there's a sense of them being really drunk or drugged or something. And they are sort of like hitting up against one another, and they hit and explode in blood. And these little kids that are dancing off to the side get spattered and stop and look up and are like, what the fuck? As he is saying, they're so fragile. How can they not break? And we go back to the scene with Mustang getting stabbed and Gluttony eating the farmhouse and Greed fighting against Wrath. Just bounce through all of these. And they don't even see the real danger, not even against things like the homunculi. What could they do? They can't defend themselves. And this is, again, him talking to Pinako, and she says, but that won't make us give up. And she clenches her fists and says, we will never give up. And as she says this, he's looking at her with his scary reflection glasses and the fire like reflecting off of them in such a way. It's a human characteristic. And then we have Lust saying, you should have bled out by now. And Mustang being like, oh, I seared the wound closed. It hurt really bad, but I fucking did it anyway. And just a series of moments where people who should have lost are actually coming out on top because they just didn't fucking stop. We then, like, after the one with Mustang, we have Ed and Greed. Thanks for giving me a minute to cool off so I could think clearly. And he does that thing where he, like, triggers the regeneration of the armor, but that means that he can't like fight at the same time, I think. It's like a weird combo of things that Ed figures out. So what's happening here is that Pinako, initially, it seems like they both are like, both Pinako and his alter ego are like, human beings ain't shit. What's the point of them even? This is bullshit. They suck. And then Pinako sort of pivots midway through the dream and is like, no. That is a voice that you don't want to listen to. We aren't going to just give up. It's not like that. We are better than that. So, yeah, this is the sort of transition point of the episode. And this is when we see Scar and his brother and everything that happens with Scar waking up and like getting his, having his brother's arm. We have Ling carrying Lan Fan, who decides to sacrifice her arm. I never really put together how many people are sacrificing arms in this show, but between Scar's brother and Lan Fan and Ed, there's 3. That feels pretty intense. A lot. This whole thing with the dog carrying her arm around, that is just so intense, man. I can't get over that. But yeah, and she says they put us through hell, but nothing they can do will make us give up, and someday we will win. The only way we're going to find out is if we try. It's better than just lying down and accepting it. You really don't care? You're fine with losing Ed and Al and everyone else you know? And he doesn't answer her, and it looks like for a second, like she might give up, because she seems very sort of like let down at the fact that he's not replying. And then his other alter ego, you're really getting worked up over this, aren't you? And when she turns around, there's no fire. There are no other people. This place is dark and empty, and it's just the 3 of them, except that it doesn't seem like it's the 3 of them. Because when he says you're really getting worked up, she whirls around and looks at him, and then she turns back, and Hempstool isn't there anymore. Don't kid yourself into thinking you can help any of them. You know that they're going to wind up dead no matter what you do. And then what happens? You're left with nothing. That's what. The smart thing to do, the only thing, take whatever is important to you and run as far away as you possibly can. And as she's talking to him, somebody grabs her from behind, and it's him again. It's not even Glasses Guy. It's Alter Ego Guy. You act like you have a conscience, but you're just being sentimental. And he puts his hand over her face and pulls her face away. And there's Hempstool and his glasses face underneath her face. As the alter ego says, you think you can change things? You honestly believe one act of caring will make you human? And as he says this, all of these creepy faces, like Envy's multiple faces, begin to pop up all over his skin. And then it's over. And Hempstool is sitting there on the rock, breathing hard. And the father is like, we have to do this. They'll spread like weeds. You can't change reality. You can only change your perception. Tell me what you think you could actually change. Their innate nature, do you really think you can do that? They'll always be weak and frightened. And what I keep, like, okay, I'm going to wait until this scene sort of wraps. He says they'll always be weak and frightened. Hempstool leans forward and looks at his hands and is like, the shine comes back over his glasses and sort of hides his eyes. And then we have a little girl putting her hands in his saying, well, we can change. We can. I know it. We may be weak, But, you know, if we didn't have things to fight for, we wouldn't have a reason to get strong. And it might seem futile to you, but it's not, because we're getting stronger with every step we take. And then we cut to that scene with Roy and Hughes. And I think that this is like going to be the ceremony a little bit later where the Führer does his speech and Roy and Hughes are talking to each other, and we find out that Roy is like pretty ambitious. But he is saying, you know, we can explore what human beings can do for each other. And Ling is saying, I wasn't ready for this. Lan Fan was, though. She made the decision that I was too weak to make. And Al saying, I'm sick of it. I'm not sitting back and letting people get hurt anymore. And then Ed, I am going to fight this, and I'm not taking this sitting down, and him walking away with his like broader shoulders. And the moment when he sees Al's body in the portal and all of this. So then we go back to this dream moment, and the girl is standing in front of him. And I think that this is meant to be like the younger version of his wife. I'm sure we can change because we're weak and because we die. We have to fight in order to live, and that's what will make us strong. And if that's not enough, if you're still not convinced that we can change, then think about us and all of the days we spent with our family in Rezembul. And we have like several cuts to photographs and moments of in like on the countryside, and him sitting on this log next to where the fire had been, but now there's like all of these cherry blossom petals raining down, and he looks up and they're like all of the people from his neighborhood are standing there in a line looking at him as they were years ago. You know, Ed and Al are still very little. His wife's still alive. Pinako looks like way younger. Pinako looks younger to a degree that I'm like, okay, so none of these people are being taken from the same period, I guess. And as he's looking at them, all of these geese seem to fly across his vision, and he startles awake and looks around, and he's in that clearing where there had been a party, evidently, because the bottle that Pinako was drinking from that he had in his dream is still sitting there. And there are a bunch of geese that are like flying by in the distance a little further down because there's like a lake down there. And he has his suitcase or his briefcase with him. And he just says, I was dreaming. And he gets up and turns to the bottle and just says, thanks for all the help, which I know he means to Pinako as the part of himself that actually has a conscience. But it really felt like he was saying, thank you, Booze, for helping me, because getting drunk gave me this dream. And I know that's not what it meant, but that was definitely how it felt in the moment for me. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because Candace said that there was like a post-credits thing. So I'm going to just like move over to that moment and see if I can get... This is the credits. It's so weird, like how different the animation is for it than the opening credits. All right, so we see a shop. Oh, okay, it's the shop where Winry is working. But is this? Oh no, this is still more credits animation. The credits are different, right? This is a new. I feel like, unless I'm misunderstanding that this is the post-credit sequence, which it might not be. It might just be the animation for the end credits, actually, that I'm still in. I didn't mention, too, that there's definitely a different song intro, and I don't like this new song. The change from the previous song The newer song I didn't like as much either, but like the first one I think is definitely the best so far, but I don't feel like it was as dramatic a step down as this third song is, which I really, really do not like. I think it's partially the guy's voice because he's got a really nasal singing voice. Okay, so here we are. We've got Al and he's with Gluttony. And if you find yourself like with a debilitating fear by the unfathomable power looming before you, then you should run like a coward. And if you lose what you believe to be your only power, then you might as well succumb to your own weakness. This is the battle you feared was coming. Put everything you've got into it, human. And then it says, next time on Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which I am not going to watch any further than that. Because I feel like that's not part of what Candace meant. All right, so I pretty much just like read you guys exactly what happened here because I needed to like talk through it with you all. I'm going to go into the comments here. Let's see. I listened to a Malcolm in the Middle podcast, and the 2 clip shows in that series were probably the shortest podcast episodes they made. Yeah, there is an exception to a clip show that I really liked in the streaming era, and that was a clip show for the show Community. I think it was in season 3 or maybe 5. And it's a clip show comprised entirely of clips of moments that didn't happen in the show. But they act like it's all like, fond memories, but it's stuff that the audience has never seen. And I think that's genius. It's so much fun because it's a bunch of just completely disjointed situations that are basically punchlines. And it just really works, you know? Michael says, watching humanity repeat all the same mistakes doesn't take nearly as long in the information age. Yeah, no joke. Let's see. I'm going to go out on a limb and say losing arms is a theme. I see what you did there, Michael. And B. Moore says, no, it was pretty much the booze. Third intro isn't my favorite, but fourth is great. Okay, cool. Looking forward to fourth then. So, okay. There's something going on with Father. I don't know. Like, maybe Father is God, actual God. And maybe he's just like, I made humans. And maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe they suck. Maybe I should just take it back. But the thing that I keep running up against is that it seems like he's trying to sort of make another version of a Philosopher's Stone, or he's trying to do something that I can't understand if he's God, why he couldn't just do that. So I don't think that's what it is, but I don't know. I just don't really know what this is. All right. So Candace's question that she left earlier. So what do you think the connection between Father and Ho-Ho is based on your current knowledge? I'm like assuming that they are actual alter egos of each other. I'm going to say it's a Jekyll and Hyde situation. And Ho-Ho is like aware of what his alternate self is doing, but for whatever reason, either can't stop him or isn't sure he should stop him. But considering the glasses, no glasses, it feels like a very Jekyll and Hyde thing. And I don't really want that to be it, but I haven't got any better idea than that. That's as good as I've got. So, Candace, again, on a scale of 1 to Luke Skywalker, how exhausting is Ho-Ho's man pain? You guys, Owen and I covered the Star Wars movies. I think they're patrons only on the website. So if you're a patron, you can go and find I had never seen any of the Star Wars movies. So I went into them like not unspoiled, because of course there's shit that I just know because I'm in the fucking world and there's no avoiding it. But there's a point in the first movie where Luke says, I was going to go to the Tashi station to get power converters with my friends. And he's so whiny. And I remember when I was like talking about it with Owen, and I was just like, man, Luke is such a little bitch. And Owen thought it was so funny. Like, the thing is, I can't give an exhaustion rating to his man pain because I don't understand what's going on. So I want to be really flip about it, but also like, I don't know how serious the situation is or what he has control over or what, like, I don't know enough, you know? So it's possible that I would be like, oh my God, this guy. Or I could just be like, oh, wow, no, yeah, that's really fucked up. I just don't know. At the moment, watching his pain, considering how much of a scumbag I feel he is, I just don't care. Like, this doesn't feel like an episode. It doesn't feel like the appropriate place for an episode about, and I put about in quotes because it's clearly not really about him, but it kind of is. When everything that I know about him feels like it's just rotating around somebody who is making homunculi and trying to control the world, and or somebody who has completely abandoned his children and doesn't give any shits about them despite whatever Pinako might say. It does not feel like there's evidence to point to the fact that he gives a shit. So in that respect, I don't care. I don't want this guy. I don't, and maybe once I get to know more about what's going on, I will. And I'll look back and be like, oh, that episode makes a lot more sense, or it's a lot more affecting now. But from where I currently stand, I'm just like, fuck this guy. And like the whole thing with Pinako and being like, why didn't you talk to them? And he's like, well, it wouldn't have changed anything. This is the thing that I also run into because I can be a little bit like too logical and practical about things. And when you're dealing with emotions, that's not helpful. So like that whole, oh, it wouldn't change anything. Well, it might not change what happened, but you reaching out to them and expressing any interest in anything, that might change something, but apparently that is not a concept that he is at all familiar with. Then Candace says, what do you think about these desert ruins they keep shoving in our face? I don't know what to think because it feels like their significance is just meant to be, well, look what could happen to a mistress. Or look what they were trying to do to Ishval. I don't think that's what actually happened in Ishval, although it's not clear to me exactly what was going on there. Like, was Ishval meant to be the sacrifice of another entire population to make a stone? Again, I don't really get the stones. The stones feel superfluous. They don't feel like they feel like such a MacGuffin. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Erica says, on a scale of Jaime Lannister to Luke Skywalker, how well is Ed coping with his lost limb? I would have to put him at Luke Skywalker, I feel like, because he's got a fake arm and he's fighting and everything. Jaime really kind of throws in the towel for a long time because he's just, So I have to give it to Ed that he seems to be coping. He's still pursuing trying to get his arm back. And in that respect, he's not dealing well, but also he has actual evidence that getting it back is possible. So, and by evidence, I mean the fact that Al's body is still alive and we see truth and he's got Ed's arm and leg. So they exist still somewhere. Whether he can really get it back, who knows? But it feels like there's a reasonable expectation there that I don't blame him for. So being attached to that doesn't feel so much like irrational and dealing badly as it does just well, I understand kind of being preoccupied with it. So that, the overall message of this is basically Pinako is his conscience, and this other aspect of him or alter ego of him is trying to convince him that human beings aren't worth it and that they're only useful as a resource. Well, a resource for what? Again, it feels like, well, we're pointing towards a resource for making a sorcerer's or a sorcerer's stone. A sorcerer's stone. Who cares? You guys all know it's the same thing. But why does he want one? What is he going to do with it? All he has done with these so far that we have seen is make a bunch of homunculi. And why? What for? To take over a mistress? He's done that. Apparently a mistress has been run by homunculi since the start. So what is the goal? What are we doing? I just feel like I'm sort of flailing for some grounding because all of it feels very in the air, you know? Let's see. Sky 5 Angel asks, favorite characters at the moment. Y'all gotta know it's Hawkeye. Al, because he's a sweet cinnamon bun. Al is just, honestly, the best boy. Like, I don't mean to speak to you, Al, as if you were a little doggy, but honestly, like, you kind of are a little doggy, and you're adorable, and you're also fighty, and I like that. So, Al. And I remain really concerned about Havoc, because I just liked the cut of his jib, and now he seems to be completely out of service, and I don't want that to be his fate. I would like him to return to action and be part of things again, but I just don't know if that's even possible. Maybe we can heal him with a Sorcerer's Stone. I'm going to keep calling it that, just FYI. So, okay, we've got Al, we've got Hawkeye, we kind of have Havoc, kind of a little bit. Erica says Armstrong. Yeah, Armstrong hasn't been around that much recently. He is such a rule follower that he hasn't been involved in any of the like stunts that Roy has been pulling. And I'm really curious, like, so in the last episode where we find out that Amestris has been ruled by homunculi since the start, we learn about how Bradley was installed into power, and also the fact that he was like given the name King Bradley by the guys who did experiments on him, which just goes to show you that these dudes should not be in charge because they gave him the name King Bradley. And truly, that's what you came up with. That's the best you could do. Fucking really? At least call him Roy. Like, change Roy Mustang's name and make King Bradley like Roy Bradley or Roy King, because Roy means king. Just, something there. It's fine. But no, he's King Bradley. But what I'm wondering, because, we have that scene where Colonel Mustard walks into the room. All of these commanders are there that obviously fucking know about the fact that Bradley is a homunculi. And it's really clear that they have been knowing. And I was sort of like wondering just how much they know. And I didn't really stop and think about what happened to the dudes who put Bradley in the position he's currently in. Because I am acting like they did this in a real secret fashion. And it, got a sleeper agent in there and nobody is aware that's what was going on. But I don't know that. All of the guys that work in his, cabinet, essentially, could all be guys who were part of the experimentation process, or guys who were part of the weird school that he went to be trained to be a leader. And they are all not only fully aware of what he is, but part of the conspiracy from the start. Because I'm picturing it as Bradley was put into place as a homunculi, and then as it happens, that people get put into his service, it is revealed to them what he is at some point. It never occurred to me that maybe they knew from the beginning and have all been part of this from the beginning and actually were potential candidates themselves for whatever it was that successfully happened to him. And I'm assuming that the people experimenting on him, when the experiment apparently succeeded with Bradley, did they just stop and not actually attempt it on anybody else? Did they just need the one guy? Or did they keep going? Are there other baby homunculi around that are kind of weird combos of human beings? He identifies as a homunculi despite starting out as a human. I'm not entirely sure what the experiment actually did and how much of his human self is even left. But because we're assuming that he can't have kids because his kid is adopted, it seems like it had a pretty radical effect on his physical body. But yeah, I'm just the whole aim of this, if you were going to be oh yeah, we just want to take over Amestra so that we can use all of these people as pawns and fuel in our giant, like, alchemical circle. They don't need him to rule the place to do that. They could just do that. So what is their goal here? What are they actually trying to do? I don't know. I don't even have a guess. I really don't, because like so much of the way that like belief and religion and politics work in this world still isn't fully clear to me. And the way that he says, well, Ed and Al are damned, that's clearly coming from like a perspective of they broke the taboo and that's like they're going to hell in a way that feels like he really believes that hell is real or knows that hell is real. And we haven't talked to that many people with that perspective in this universe. We had that like couple of episodes dealing in the church with the weird, the priest who was scamming everybody and the weird chimera that he had as his, and that was kind of all. Otherwise, we haven't met anyone who's particularly religious. So if his dad is, what does that even mean? What motivates him then? I don't know. I don't get it, guys. B. Moore says, Envy promised to answer some of these things last episode. Well, I mean, Envy may have done, but I don't feel Envy is terribly reliable, so I'm not going to hold my breath too much. The thing is, mainly, how much is Envy allowed to tell? Because it feels like I just don't know. Al is opening the door, and it seems like he is being led to the father. But is that a trap? Because he's acting like, oh yeah, I'll go and I'll find out exactly where Ed went when he got eaten, and then I'll just go rescue Ed. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to be allowed. Unless he's betting on the fact that the father is going to need Ed back for a sacrifice, and so help him to get Ed back for his own reasons. But just the direction that everything is going in, I feel I have no theories really, because it all feels sort of disconnected from each other in a lot of ways. Like the ruins in the desert, I'm just like, well, that just feels like a cautionary tale. If it means something more, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry guys. This episode just like kind of left me flailing a little bit. What are you going to do? It's going to happen. I'm going to wrap up though. So I appreciate all of you coming here and feeding me information. I appreciate y'all leaving questions as well. I know I didn't give satisfactory answers. My apologies for that, but I did my best. And thank you again to Max for commissioning this episode. Hope y'all are enjoying the coverage despite me being a little bit unmoored. And I will be seeing you again next week with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.